And recording. Sweet. Well, thanks for making time to chat with me, friends.
Of course.
No problem, Adam.
Yeah, you guys have been up to a lot of online stuff too, which is cool. And that's kind of why I wanted to chat with you, is like embrace that that online community that I'm seeing spring up everywhere. It's obviously existed pre-2020, but we've seen a lot of stuff pop up, and that includes stuff that you guys are working on. So excited to chat about that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, awesome. Us too.
I like the idea of us being able to still build on these kinds of things, even though we're not in person. We can still create, and manifest positive things, even though we're not in person. So super cool.
Mhm.
It sparked
Agreed.
it. Like, we kind of have to be inventors now, come up with new ways. I mean, platforms exist, but it's interesting to find new ways to integrate those platforms into our lives and our networks. And they're built in a way that they're very customizable, and so, for example, I don't want to talk too much about it before we do intros and stuff, but like the mentorship program you're doing is a cool way to tap into the idea of community mentorship and using technology to make that happen when we're not able to see each other in real life.
Yeah, straight up.
For sure, man.
So on that note, why don't we do quick intros? I'm guessing most people who are going to tune in will know who at least one of you is, if not both of you. And we have a pretty long history, so we can chat about that too. But yeah, why don't Mark? Why don't you start with a quick intro?
My name is Mark Cruz. I am the brother of this fellow, if he's to my screen down here. I am longtime friends with this guy over here. And I go by DJ Fatrok as well in the DJ community and music community. And I am part of Beat Drop, music production and DJ school. And I am collaborating with Rick on this 2021 mission to teach students the art form of DJing. So that's my intro.
I like the intro. It's a good intro. It's on the top tier of intros, actually.
Oh, thank you. Can you do better? Let's see what you got.
Yeah, you set that bar pretty high. Let's see if it can come at you.
I'm everything Mark said, but the Rick Cruz version. So, yeah, my government name is Rick Cruz, and my DJ name is C-Sik. That's my stage name. I've been at it ever since Mark and I first watched VHS tapes of turntablists and scratch DJs, and I think that was like late 90s, around 96, 97. I've been playing in clubs and doing parties since like 2007-ish. And for the last, man, I don't even know how long we've been at Beat Drop for now, but I think the last decade to 12 years, something like that, I've been teaching at Beat Drop. We've gone through so many different versions of it. We started teaching, out of the director Mitch Lee's studio, and we moved to SAIT. We were teaching there in their classrooms, and then we finally got our own spot on 17th, and I think that's when we started to get the most traction and the most like public viewership from the city. And then ever since the COVID lockdown, we shifted over to, before that, we actually moved to the NFC, such a beautiful establishment. And then we finally went to the online format. So that's where we're at today. So like personally, those are kind of the two passions in my life. It's music, DJing, and then passing on that knowledge and hopefully inspiring, sparking others to do the same.
Well, you guys have been at it for a minute too. Like, how long have you guys been DJing for? You said late 90s, so let's quick math, I guess, like 20 plus years.
Yeah, I mean, I would say from the moment we got our gear, which was around 97, 98, was basically grinding out the learning process in the bedrooms. So I mean, Rick had his setup and I had mine, and
Yeah.
it was like trading what did you learn today type of thing, and then jamming together. Like I'll go his studio, and then it'd be like knock knock knock, yo, you scratching? Okay, well, okay, come in my room. And it was a lot of like, cross learning, but then we sort of had individual spirits that were kind of thinking, well, for me, I was more inclined to wanting to figure out how to collect these records to play them. And I think I can quickly attest to Rick. Well, he was just like, well, I want to do the battling shit. So
yeah, I just wanted to take everybody out.
So
I was like a b-boy before DJing, so battling was a big thing for me. I just wanted to get better and be on stage and be like in juice and just take DJs out.
Did that separation happen early on? Like, did you kind of because you're different, you're brothers and you DJ and you're both turntablists and you both play, well, I'd say a wide variety of music, but you have a lot of similarities, but there's some pretty big differences between the two of you. And like, did that start way back in the day, like when you were jamming in your bedrooms?
To a certain extent, I think collaboratively we just enjoyed like learning along the way and then observing what was happening in the DJ world. But I think like what Rick said, he really got into DJing due to the battle experience through b-boying, but also we really got exposed to DJing through battling. Like my entry into really kind of touching turntables and being around DJs were DJs who battled, and we're in these DJ competitions that we were exposed to. And then, that was kind of Rick's path. Whereas for me, I wanted to do that, but I really just love this kind of cultivating your music collection, because I knew eventually I'd figure out a way I'd be able to take these records in the crates and do what the guys did, which was bring their crates to the spots. And that was something that resonated with me more so as a goal, as something I developed wanting to do.
Yeah, and those samples or those records come in handy down the road too, sampling into like production and all of that as well. You mentioned VHS though. VHS, like there were so many amazing tapes back then, and for me too, that was my exposure to breakdancing, graffiti, and turntablism. Like, and who was it? Was it I can't, was it Qbert who had that like? It was like it's an introduction to DJing even, and he had methods even and like how to.
Yeah.
And at the time, I blew my mind. I was like, because I had a buddy, not a brother. I had to go to his house to use his gear, but that Vestex mixer I still have, that was the mixer we were using. Same, it was about 99 too.
Cool.
But it was disconnected from the world of DJing. Like for sure in his bedroom, we'd be going through drum and bass records and his mom's collection of soul and music from the 70s and 80s. But as soon as you left the bedroom, I was back in Whitehorn, and not a ton of other DJs, and not a lot of that of that stuff in my life. And then now you can be exposed to it everywhere you look, through Twitch, through YouTube. So it's interesting to be in this world for 20 plus years. You say you've watched beat drop evolve. You've also watched DJing evolve, and DJing wasn't even around much longer before you two started, before you picked it up. So you firsthand watched the art form evolve and change. I've also known both of you to take a break here or two. People got burnt out and stuff like that. But just kudos to you for sticking with it. That's between the both of you. You have almost 50 years of DJ experience.
That's wild. It's wild.
It's wild. And you had such an
and the hair's still black. Yes, not gray yet. All right.
I think that's such a cool advantage to have a brother or a sibling in the next room with gear and just to jam on ideas together. Like I said, I had to go to my friend's house, you know, or whatever, just to be able to go into and steal your brother's records even.
Oh yeah.
I think you
never
did
thought
that.
about it that way, Mark. Like I totally didn't even realize that was the environment we grew up in. Like to have, because usually it's one kid in the house, right, that does that thing. Like one kid's playing the guitar and then the other's like into video games or something like that. But to have both like on the exact same path with very similar setups in each room, and then like I'll be scratching and you'll be mixing. And then the thing is, Mark always had friends over who were DJs too. Like I didn't have any friends who were DJs. I was like literally the only one doing it. Actually, I had a couple friends, but they weren't as like serious about it as me. Like I was like, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. And I knew that from the very beginning, to be honest. But to have like Mark's friends come over and then give their input and their knowledge and like their styles, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna steal that from that person, and you know, and then they go to parties and then they rock it. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go watch those parties, and I'm like, I'm gonna steal all those mixes. Like I was just soaking up so much stuff and just biting everything. And like that's what you do when you first start out. You know, you're a baby when you start out in anything, and you just like copy the words of like, you know, mom and dad and uncle and auntie and like anyone who's older. And I think that's why I was able to like get as good as I did at an accelerated rate, because I had my brother around, his friends, and then he knew some of the best DJs in Toronto and then also in our city when we moved here. So yeah, I was like very fortunate to have that type of environment around me and like all those DJs. I just actually thought about that. I feel really grateful for that experience.
Well, just as you were saying that, on top of that, the household was it was directly and indirectly supportive, because, you know, my mom, who loves music, anything music related, like she's very, like anytime there's just music, it doesn't matter what the genre is, it just makes her click and tick to like wanting to dance or sing or hum along. So like she had no reservations about how loud sound was in our household. And then my dad is really big on music too. And, you know, he would always say something like, you know, if I was your guys' age, that's exactly what I'd be doing. You know, like we showed Qbert videos and he just seemed to like understand it. Like he wasn't asking questions, like he could understand there's a beat and he can understand that there's somebody doing something percussive or melodic on top of these beats. And he understands it. So for us to make music and do it obnoxiously loud was not a troublesome in our household. And so we also have an uncle who lives not far from where we used to live, who would always come in and want to jam with us while we put on a beat and scratch. And then he'd take out his guitar and want to figure out how to jam on it too, because he was inquisitive and wanted to go, hey, how does this work into my music life? And so there was just music just constantly revolving. And so I think that helped us too, where we could be loud and scratch all night and turn the bass up. And it was okay for most part until it was time to go to bed. You know, they'd be like, that's all good. We just turned it down, but we were still till 2, 3, 4 in the morning cutting it up, you know?
Yeah,
you're safe at home, you know, like part of that's probably just your folks being like, they're doing something creative and they're staying safe and being, you know, productive or whatever it is. Like it's hard. It would be hard to fault you for that.
True. I mean, we were fortunate because we have friends whose stories are completely different. Where their parents were like, stop spending all that time on DJing. We've had friends whose parents threatened to throw their turntables like out in the garbage, and our parents were far from that. You know, they were so supportive. Like whatever, they knew we were staying up late, and I had school the next day, and they were letting me do that. Yeah, well, like Mark said, they always let the music be super loud. They not once told us to turn the music down. No. Not once.
No.
Oh, my mom would come halfway down the stairs and she would just say, shut it down. It took maybe 3 seconds for me to turn everything off. Yeah, exactly. Kill switch. But interestingly enough, your dad came like kind of full circle a few years ago and was creating crate boxes, like handcrafted out of wood with both your logos on there. So, and that's cool. Like get involved later on in that way. It's amazing to see like a family project like that come to life.
Yeah, it's really crazy, man. And it's taken off like a lot over, especially over the lockdown. I think there's a lot of people trying to like dress up their gear, you know, during the lockdown and stuff, and spending a lot more time on their hobbies. But my dad's been fortunate too, and like we've been fortunate because we help our dad as well. It's like it is a family business, but like one of Jazzy Jeff's MC, he messaged us. He said, "I want to get Jeff this thing." I think it was for his birthday or whatever. So my dad made Jazzy Jeff a stand for his Ableton Push, and then he's been on like Mass Appeal's Rhythm Roulette, and he's done like Serato tutorials, and you can see it in the background. And there's been people in the YouTube comments like, where's that from? And then there's some people who do YouTube tutorials on music production, and a guy named Jeff Gibbons actually, and he has the stand in it the whole time, and it's like a 9-episode thing, and we just get flooded with requests to make this. Like my dad can't even keep up. We have a waiting list now. We don't even take orders anymore. It's just sold out on the site, and people just email us asking to be put on the waiting list. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
So that's still going then?
Still going. It's going like really strong. It's going even stronger now than ever.
Is your pop retired or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's retired. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, is that something he kind of like has taken over as like kind of his like project, his passion?
Yeah, like in the beginning, I just realized that my dad needs something to do all the time, and I'm the same way. Like I have a really hard time sitting down and just watching Netflix. Like half hour in, I'll turn it off and like figure out something better that I could do. Mm-hmm. And he's the same way. So like he didn't choose to retire. He actually lost his job, and then he was gonna start working again, but I think he just got in we're kind of similar too. Like we, on one side, we're very driven and we need to do a lot of stuff, but if we get in a pattern of laziness, then we'll stay in that. And I think
100%
like relaxing, you know?
That's me too.
And I think he just started relaxing, and I was like, I got to give him something to do. He's driving my mom nuts because he's like in the kitchen, like, oh, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And my mom's like, I'm trying to cook, get out of the kitchen.
She's like, I need you to get out of the kitchen.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So then we just asked them like, hey, can you make these record crates? And then that turned into stands and everything. And then, yeah, now it is like, you know, extra income and good income for them. And luckily they were over 65 now, so they're taken care of by with other means. But, you know, to get some groceries and for my dad to get some wine, you know, he's got that extra cash money in his pocket. So I'm very like thankful for all the customers across like the States, Canada, and wherever else that are purchasing from him.
It's a common story in the last few years of people losing their jobs for whatever reason and having to kind of reinvent what work looks like for them and what income looks like, you know, and you see people now kind of spreading out their income over a couple different things instead of maybe one job. We certainly do that. Me and my partner, we, you know, she's a tattooer, I'm a designer, and then we have our shop where we're doing gear and merch and stuff like that. But it's been nice to, when things slow down, to have something to work on. And B, like you said, just to have another stream of income. It just, especially what we've seen in the last year or two, the future is very uncertain. And so spreading your eggs out into a few baskets is very helpful.
Straight up.
Well, write that down, folks.
So when you were learning, and you're learning from VHS and you're learning from, you know, watching other DJs and biting style and then iterating on that and figuring your things out. And then you know, fast forward to 20 years later and we have Beat Drop. Now students can take a class with instructors who have been DJing for decades, kind of probably leapfrog a bunch of mistakes. Whether it's technical mistakes or you guys had a master class a few weeks ago about even like how to book, you know, how to, I didn't take the class, but, you know, there's intangibles. There's not just like, how do you do this certain thing, but it's like, how do you talk to people? How do you build up your business? Mm-hmm. So what's it like being a new DJ now, do you think, compared to having to like maybe take a little longer to find your way. Is there an advantage nowadays? Is there an advantage to the old way of kind of like figuring it out on your own? What do you guys think?
I would say, sorry, Mark, to take it over, and I'll pass it right off to you. But I would say, like, I think it's easier and harder at the same time. And I'm gonna say it's not easier, but like you can learn a lot faster because there are classes like what we teach at Beat Drop, but you can also, you know, go on YouTube. There's a lot of online options as well, like through the Beat Junkie School and Scratch School. I can't remember what it's called, like Scratch Bassett's program. Like there's a lot of ways to learn, like you said, where you can just leapfrog past like a lot of the stuff that you used to have to when you're teaching yourself. I think one of the things that makes it harder is that as a DJ, you're not just a DJ anymore. Like if you want to be a successful DJ, you know, if you want to get into the craft, that's a whole other thing. Like you can learn the craft really fast, just like everything. That's why we see, you know, these super young skateboarders just like killing it, and these young parkour kids and boxers and everything, whatever the craft is. But as a DJ, to, you know, get noticed, to get gigs, to find success, you got to understand branding, you got to understand marketing, you got to be a salesman, salesperson. You
got to understand Twitch.
You got to understand Twitch. You got to understand tech. It was funny. I made this joke with Mollify the other day, and she was saying something about how she needed an Ethernet cable on Facebook. I knew exactly why she needed an Ethernet cable, because she's DJing on Twitch and she needs a super long Ethernet cable, and that's never been a part of the DJ conversation. So my joke was like, you know, hey, like C-Sik, I want to get into DJing. What kind of gear should I get? I'm like, well, you should look at a water-cooled PC, a long Ethernet cable, something with a good graphics card. You know, it's so true.
Interesting,
and like,
yeah.
You got to learn like OBS or Ecamm or whatever you're going to use. And man, it's kind of nuts, and it's a little overwhelming. And then not to mention there's so many different softwares. Before you just had, you know, one outlet. You grab records, you grab your mixer and your turntables. And then when the CDJs came out, you had that option. But now there's like turntables and CDJs and playing with USB sticks and controllers and record box and tractor. And like, what do you do? Well, how do you get into it?
So that's actually a good question. And I've pinged Mark like randomly before and been like, yo, when you're at a club, what setup are you going to use? Blah, blah, blah. So do DJs nowadays have to learn every format? Like, does a DJ need to learn how to spin vinyl as well as how to use a controller as well as CDJs? Like, are they going to go into a club and it could have one of the three options or more, and they better be prepared?
Yeah, I think so. I think over the last year, from the venues that I've played at, I've been hitting a variety of gear, and that's going to probably continue on. And I think the value of learning on each tool is important. My personal belief is it's great if you could get the knowledge of playing on turntables, because of the amount of skill it does take to play on things that are a little more not as forgiving sometimes. So you really got to test yourself in learning how to mix and how to play on things that might not necessarily be a perfect scenario. And that would just train you to kind of be aware, and your senses are, there's a lot to experience with those senses. Not to say that using the modern gear now is better or worse, but your entryway from turntables the curve is a lot more challenging to master. The curve is harder. Once you get onto controllers and you have that awareness from your turntables, I think it makes it a little bit easier to understand how to use the modern gear now. And then there's advantages to both. And nowadays I don't think there's a right or a wrong. I think it's a matter of what you want to experience as a DJ. How do you want to learn? And I think the turntables it's the best way to learn, I think.
One way I look at it, in art or graphic design, when people ask what programs I use, to me, it doesn't matter. And like, that's not what people want to hear. Like they actually want to hear what you use. But to me, it's not about what you use. My first few logos I designed were in Microsoft Paint, and they're nothing. I like them. I'll just say that. But I think what's important is that you're using a tool that like allows you to express yourself. Because maybe in design you're trying to express someone else, but like in music, it's about expression. You're trying to convey either an energy or whatever, an emotion. You're trying to get a party, dancing, doing whatever you want to, whatever it is you're doing. The least amount of like bullshit in your way to make that happen is kind of what you need to do. So if that's turntables, if that's a controller, whatever it is, as long as it makes you be able to perform as effortlessly as possible, I think that for me is the priority. The tool doesn't matter as much. We spend a lot of time looking at tools, being jealous of other people's, drum kits, guitars, setups. But at the end of the day, those don't matter quite as much as your technique, as your commitment, as even some other more intangible things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
100%, man.
So right now, Beat Drop is 100% virtual.
Yes.
Will post 2021, or when our new normal starts to kind of establish itself as what life would look like in that situation, will you guys go back to being in a room together?
It's like it's more an answer, I think, for the director, since he would be the one making all like the financial decisions. But I think there's just a lot of pluses with doing it online right now. I mean, I love person to person. It's so, I don't know, you can find so much more success in teaching when you can just show them live, like right in front of you, rather than having to set up some cameras and making sure the sound, like the line feed sounds good and everything. But also, we've reached so many different countries teaching kids and the adults as well. Like we've had students in India and China and South America, and we would have never been able to do that, if we were just a bricks and mortar school. So, I think it's like a financial thing, to be honest, just to be like, just to be blunt about it. Like if we could afford it, obviously we'd love to do that. But there are like some awesome advantages. I don't think we'll ever stop doing the online. It would be a question on, do we do online and bricks and mortar, or do we just do online? But I don't think we'd ever go back to just doing bricks and mortar again, because our reach has just been amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Ideally, I'd like to, if I had it in my way in a perfect world, it'd be awesome to have both options, really. Yeah.
I was thinking about that earlier when I was wondering about what we're going to chat about, but like even just like some small town, like Albertans, being able to log on, and there may not be a huge hip hop or DJ community in their town, and that would allow them to just instantly tap into a community. Yeah, what 2020 has kind of forced on us in terms of like figuring out how to connect with our communities. I think that there's a ton of benefits there. A ton of silver lining came out of last year. So yeah, that brings me to my DJ mentors class that you guys are running now, which is that affiliated through Beat Drop? I saw the logo on there.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So Beat Drop offers a lot of like, there's like mastering classes, there's DJ 101, there's a bunch of like technical stuff. What's different about this course?
Well, when we were teaching at the bricks and mortar, when we decided to teach, we only thought we were going to teach the craft of DJing, and that was kind of it. We just wanted you to be able to mix records together. Then we tacked on, now we want to get you guys to be more creative and use some of the transition techniques and tricks that you might not know about, so that you can find your own style. And then we tacked on a third class called 301, and then we got into like advanced DJ knowledge type stuff, like reading crowds and programming your sets and all that. And then after a while, I started to realize that I'm not just teaching these these students how to DJ. I'm like grooming them to be like, you know, everything from good DJs to good people, and like understanding how to teach them to have positive mindsets and positive attitudes so that they can like pass on this type of energy and this type of vibe the way I'm instructing to others. And then like slowly but surely over the years, I started to feel like a mentor, but I never said those words. And when we decided to go online, we were like, that's what we're going to make this. It's like, it's not just DJ lessons. This is a mentorship. We are going to groom them with like DJ mindset, but also like growth mindset, you know, which is not just a DJ thing. That's like the to everything. That's just the individual pursuits and collective pursuits as well, to be better people and better in the community. And that's why we created that group. To, like the Facebook group is just to, you know, give back and bridge the gaps between, you know, the beginner DJs and the experienced DJs and all the cities and all that kind of stuff too. But yeah, this whole idea of being a mentor to me is like just, you know, being like a good guide for the students, not only in just DJing, but you know, in their goals in life, and using DJing as the vehicle to help them do that. I know that sounds a little like Yoda-y and Mr. Miyagi-y.
No, I don't
like,
think so at all. I think as I get
okay,
older,
cool.
I realize how interconnected everything we do is. And especially if you've stuck with a few things in your life. I used to think like music was different for me than graphic design from work, because I didn't always do design as work. But as I get older, I'm like, oh no, this is all leading down the same like hallway, you know. And it's and how you do anything is, or what's that saying? How you do anything is how you do everything. No,
like
how you do
everything.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Sounds
I need
good.
to watch more. Mike the Situation is great at one-liners.
Yeah, he totally is.
It's true though. Like if you spend time being intentional in DJing, of course that'll bleed into the rest of your life. Exactly. I don't think it's spiritual or Yoda-y at all. I think it's very logical and practical.
Yeah, I mean, I would parallel it to the same concept of martial arts, right? It's like your teacher is training you to be the best at this particular style and this particular art as possible, but they want you to take that, you know, the fortitude and the discipline into your other areas of life, because at the end of the day, we're training you to be an exceptional person. Like, you can't be just some Joe Schmo, low motivation martial artist who treats people poorly and who has a complete high level of arrogance, right? Like, you know, martial arts is for me is a great analogy. It's that leveling up analogy, right? And you got to go through the processes to level up, the tests and the training. And, you know, when I think of mentorship, it's yes, we're guiding them along the way, but it's also the conversation about accountability. Like, if we're providing you a skill to learn, you know, we're going to be there to make sure that you've put forth the work, and remind you that putting in that work is important to not just master that skill, but to do it again and again and again. That's why I kind of compare it to martial arts as well. I think the mentorship process and accountability, that's where we see our students fast track, because when we were coming up, it was very hard to get advice from people and to get like genuine advice, and from people to give you advice that they actually care to give you. Like,
that's true. Like, that's true. We talk about that, Mark, in our breakfast we have sometimes, the mentality of competition versus cooperation. And I think back in the day, the mentality was a little different, or maybe I was in the wrong crowds, but there was a lot of like people holding their information close to their chest, didn't want to maybe share it. And nowadays, again, maybe it's like I've shaken up my network enough that I'm just surrounded by amazing folks, but there seems to be a lot more collaboration, a lot more sharing, a lot more people just willing to share secrets and put it all out there. And I've heard mentors of mine before say that if you give away a secret, it means you have to create a new one. You know, like if you give away your technique, it means you have to start some new techniques. So it keeps you fresh too, right?
Yeah.
If you give your secrets to the community, you have to start building up some new stuff. But
Yeah, I mean, there was a point in time where Cuber was preaching the value of giving away all his secrets and saying like, well, the reason why I'm giving away all of my secrets so you can learn is that I can learn from you, right?
Yeah, it's not a one-way street.
It'll give me room to learn more things too. Like if you take what I give you and master it, well, I got to come up with however many more new scratch techniques because it's already done, right? And so, yeah, it opens up. I think it's energy based too, isn't it?
Very much like DJing, right? Like it's a cycle. You're playing for a crowd that is using you to pump up their energy while you're using them to also pump up your energy, and it becomes this cycle until you break the cycle by like clearing the floor or something silly. But it's all about energy, you know, and being aware. Like you said, you even teach how to read a crowd.
Yeah,
that's a hard thing to teach, by the way. Like a really hard thing to teach.
Yeah, I mean, most people are reading a crowd by the time it's too late, I'm guessing. You know, and it's and no Rihanna's remix is going to save you at that point.
No.
So I think technically you probably still have to log those hours. You know, you can be taught how to do a certain scratch or transition, but until you still have to build up the muscle memory. I find I primarily drum. Like drumming is my main musical avenue. I find until I've mastered the song physically, so like really committing the entire arrangement to my muscle memory, not until that point can I actually perform the song because I'm too focused on playing it or keeping up, you know, or like thinking about that transition or thinking about what's next in the arrangement. And there's no way you can commit something to muscle memory except by going through logging hours. That's it. But then that unlocks something unreal once you've mastered that, and you can start performing the song. And that's like visually now you can start being more expressive or adding ad lib parts to it, you know, coming up with stuff on the fly. So there's also that argument to continue with all the practice and put the hours in.
Man. Yeah. Student for life, right? Like
student for life.
Student for life. Like what did they say? If you're the master, then what else you have to learn, right?
Well, yeah, and you can you're always learning from your people you teach too. You know, good teachers always say they learn from their students. So it's yeah, it's the other thing I learned as I get older is that like this linear idea of the world just going from left to right, forward motion is not, doesn't jive with reality. The world is, there's nuance and there's cycles, and it's, you know, one thing feeds into another. Yeah. And
mistakes are gonna happen. Mistakes and
well, and that's another thing I notice now is people are less fascinated with perfectionism now, or are starting to pull the screen down. I think I was watching Joash Charles Twitch a couple days ago, and watching him try a transition and then be like, oh no, let's try that again. And like literally like just stopping, breaking it down, and like kind of like thinking about it and then trying again, instead of waiting until like his set is like perfect. I mean, that's part of his content, but I think that is so accessible as a new DJ to be watching someone who's competed at a high level go through the steps of learning something, because we often think like people who are masters kind of, it happened magically. We don't always think of how much hours they've logged. So to see someone, to see someone kind of be vulnerable in front of you, and also a whole live stream, you know, as someone learning, I think that would go a long way.
Yeah, I've been way more attracted to watching the process of like anyone who's incredible at what they do these days than just seeing the incredible part at the end. Like, it doesn't even excite me as much anymore to just see the incredible. Like, obviously it does, like an athlete or anything, or a really good DJ set. It's like, wow, that was amazing. But I love the human part of it, which is the process, and just seeing like how they couldn't do that before. I'm a big basketball head, and like that, like a Derrick Rose who had no jump shot in 1 year, and then after a summer, all of a sudden, there it is. And it's not like that happened overnight. That was an entire summer of putting up those shots, doing the exact same shot, doing it in different variations over and over again to get that muscle memory, like you were talking about. Like, I love that, because I think the one thing that we never really spoke about before, when we used to just kind of keep our secrets, is how hard it is to get to that point, and how much work we were putting in the studio, and how many times we didn't want to. Like, when DJing was just super fun for me, and it was the beginning, there wasn't no like hard work aspect to it, because it was just fun. But then, like, when it started to become my career and I started to have to pay the bills, there'd be days when I'm like, I got to make this mix and I do not want to do it. I just want to sit on the couch, or I want to do something else, or whatever. I just want to go outside. But to know that like there are musicians and athletes and artists and people at super high levels that have those days and that are bad at something at some point, just like makes you, it's comforting,
Mm-hmm.
And then you can, when you have to step up to the plate and put in those hours, you can remember those stories. It's like, it's a lot easier to have inspiration in that than to just watch the amazingness. Sometimes the amazingness just makes you feel like you want to quit. But if you know of the story before that and the process, then you're like, oh, okay. Well, if it took you 10,000 hours to get there and you hated a lot of it, like Andre Agassi hated tennis. I was reading his book the other day.
Is that why he was such an asshole?
Probably. Andre, I hope, are you watching, man? But yeah, like he absolutely hated it. His dad forced him to do tennis since he was a little kid. He was like living vicariously through him. He put a tennis court in the crappy house that they lived in the backyard. And so he just despised it all the way up until the end of his career. After all of his Grand Slams and everything, he despised it. The only time he started to enjoy was when he started to teach it and the joy in these people who just love tennis and want to learn from him. So like that's I forgot what my point was going to be about all that, but that's such a crazy story and a crazy
I forgot too, but I was distracted by Andre Agassi's legacy hair, that hair he used to have.
It was kind of like what you got going on right now.
Yeah, man. There you go.
I'm gonna need some bleach. So we have an hour scheduled to chat, and we have 15 minutes left. So I want to talk about the Facebook group too.
Cool.
Because that's interesting. It does blend in a couple of the ideas we've been talking about, where DJing is not just a type of music or a type of creative expression. It's also finds its way into your life in other aspects, and that includes mindfulness and being intentional. So why don't you start just by kind of telling us what the DJ group is on Facebook and kind of what your conversations have been so far, and how that's different than, say, your beat drop group.
So the Facebook DJ community group was conceived out of from a post that Rick put out there. And it was just kind of create conversation around the topic of, why do we see or observe producers kind of exercise more collaboration and open dialogue and talking about the art form and those kinds of things, and passing down information, sharing knowledge, etc. In the DJ world, we don't see that enough. We don't see that. And so why is there a difference, or is there a difference? And so Rick was receiving responses about how they wished or yearned for more collaboration, or wanted to see that happen more, or experienced the negative, which was not being received. And it made us think, you know what, there's a problem, and I think we might have a solution to provide. It might not be the complete answer, but we decided to put a group together to create discussion, to create collaboration, and to do it so that it's inclusive, because one of the hardest things to do is to gather knowledge and information from seasoned veterans and from people that have been doing it for a while, because you're either intimidated or they don't want to give it to you. And there's just a communication barrier. So, you know, our goal is to bring people into the group, welcome them, but under the process of being open. And so if you're a veteran coming in, we're somewhat expecting you to be helpful to the group, to share knowledge, to share your experiences, so we can give the new DJs a feeling of like, hey, I can be a part of this community. If I see so-and-so and so-and-so in the club, I can probably approach them by first name and just go, hey, I'm in the group and can I chat with you when you're, you know, on your break or whatever. Like, those are kinds of things we want to see happen. And so we actually post things where we create dialogue. So whether it be like, what are your goals for this year? Who can help you? From Rick posting up mini workshops on how to form a Red Bull 3 style set, things like that. And then we'll invite guests from, you know, all parts, and then just kind of talk about things that are helpful to evolve as a DJ, whether that be a certain skill, whether that be what are some sort of what is the mindset that you need to have to attack this profession? And then other things like health and wellness and stuff. Things like conversations that will help you, not just from a technical point of view, but from a completely holistic point of view, right? And so it's growing. It's actually growing. Rick and I do our Facebook Lives once a week. And this is where we pick a topic for the week and we kind of start talking, and then we hope people chime in. And then, and then we include our guests as well.
What day of the week's that? The Facebook page?
So moving forward, we're going to be doing some Monday sessions. And I think there's going to be honest with you, there'll probably be some, hey, if we're inspired, there might be a random pop-up.
But Monday, is there a set time or?
12 o'clock Mondays going forward?
Mondays, those will be like the actual kind of like lessons, like very DJ focused, like a mini topic on DJing. Like we just did one on programming and telling the story in your DJ set using the story arc. So that's Mondays at noon. And then Fridays, that's when we try to go live. And lately we've just had guests like every single Friday, same time, noon, talking about all the topics Mark just brought up.
Yeah. And you know what? Because it's community based, it's not just us feeding the group. We have
it's not top
DJs
down
in there, getting in there and asking questions, and so it's starting to the communication is starting to revolve now.
Yeah, and people will start to build their confidence in chiming in, you know, whenever that comes for them. And like any Facebook group, people can just post a question whenever. They don't need to wait for a Facebook Live, right? Like that conversation can happen with or without you, because you now have a whole group of people that can chime in and help out. Totally.
I mean, the idea of the group is not to gain advantage through self-promotion, right? It's strictly share, learn, and go from there.
Well, I mean, earlier you mentioned how grateful you feel to have the opportunities you did growing up, having each other to play off of, having a supportive family, and a good little community. And it sounds like what you're doing is kind of paying it forward and being like, we had this great opportunity. We want to share that with other people.
For sure. And I think not only paying it forward, but like, it's almost like we got compound interest on all that. And we want to pay the compound interest forward as well. Like, I think that's what you should do in the generations, you know, like the next generation of DJs should be like thousands of times better than the last generation if you're passing that on, you know. And I think in the DJ world, like, this might sound controversial, but I started seeing from generation to generation, like skill levels getting less, you know, especially like in the turntablism world. And like, you know, mixing getting sloppier. I don't know what was going on there. But I started to think maybe it's because the the gatekeepers of the DJ community aren't doing their job of passing this down. Like, I mean, like in the blues world, you see like these guitarists just, I don't know how it's being passed down because I'm not in that world. But when I see like, you know, like a John Mayer, for instance, I'm just like, wow, man, like that's crazy. And then you see like the kids now and they're all crazy. And I don't know if that knowledge was getting passed down the same way in the DJ community. Maybe that like was part of the problem of why I saw like skill levels. So I feel like, you know, if we can give all the skills we know, but also all the knowledge we've gained, and like talk about all the mistakes we've made, and just all the little tricks and the secrets that people never tell you about, like the things that you get from when you're in the back of the hi-fi club and there's a DJ from the UK and they're telling you some super secret DJ stuff that you would never hear anywhere. If I can reveal that to 100 people, then man, like what's gonna happen? What kind of garden am I going to grow if I'm planting those type of seeds? You know, when I'm gone 100 years later, like, well, is DJing going to be this crazy? And is it going to like trickle up? And is it going to be at one point, it would be something Mark and I dropped in a Facebook community group, you know? So that's kind of my hope when I'm always just, and that's why I got no secrets, man. Like, I just, like the curtain is completely open. Ask me anything. I'm an open book. I'll tell you everything and I'll be as candid, you know, as I can. And I'll always like, I won't sugarcoat anything. And I'll tell all the mistakes that I've made, but all the things that have made me successful as well. Cause I think it's our duty. Music has given so much to us and DJing has given so much to me as well. And like, I feel like it's my duty to give as much as I can back.
Yeah, well said, man. I mean, we had a guest come on one time talking about the process of being collaborative and building community and having that grow. And that's rewarding, man. The genuineness we're putting out there, just it comes back. And it comes back in just good feelings, to be honest with you. Like,
some of it is selfish. Some of it is like, this makes me feel good. And I'm not afraid to say that out loud. Like that to me is just one of the rewards we get for doing some of this work, you know, is it does make you feel better. And there's a very different feeling than you get from hoarding things, you know, that doesn't make you feel good. So I agree 100%. Like it does make you feel good. And we shouldn't be afraid of that. You know, we should celebrate that too.
That's a great point. I mean, if you're going to be selfish, why not be selfish for a reason like that, right?
That's a good way to
selfish.
Do it.
Yeah, I guess. Selfish to feel good, but you're making other people feel good. So whatever.
One thing I've noticed too, like, I've been pretty isolated. My sense of community, I mean, I've been a musician. I've known you guys for a long time, but I've always like really kind of hung on to my lone wolf identity. And I'm finally like letting that go. And that's been a really nice journey for me. This for me is community. This is new for me. Getting in touch, putting myself out there before my content is perfect. Putting my designs out there before they're perfect. Getting into anti-racist spaces before I'm perfect, which will never happen. So, but part of the journey, I think, is just putting yourself out there because you're going to get that feedback, you know, whether it's good or it's like, hey, shouldn't do this, A or B or C, and this is why. The community supports you, but it also holds you accountable. So if you are making a mistake that is hurtful or either to yourself or someone else in your community, like that's another benefit is of kind of like not being too afraid to put yourself out there, is that your community will be there for you. You know, they're going to help you along the way. And the more you get comfortable putting your work out there, the better it will be and the more community you'll generate. That is my personal experience. There's been a bit of negative, like there's growing pains, but for the most part, it's like, find that community, find that network that, you know, you feel aligned with, and just join up, start having conversations, put your work in there, let someone critique it. And just start.
Well, you know what? That's a great attitude, Adam. And I'd be really curious 3-6 months to a year having the same conversation about what the benefits are of you being more open to that. It sounds like you're in a really like your mindset is bring on the feedback, right? Like bring it on. And I think that's really important for people like us. Like there, to be able to have the mindset to receive feedback is that's the catalyst for growth, man. And for me, I'm in a place where I love feedback. Like I love it. It's just like, tell it to me however you want to tell it. Like,
yeah, the more honest, the better.
I don't care, because it's just your personality, the way you're giving feedback, but give it to me. Whatever way you're going to give it to me, I'll take it, because I want to grow.
Having said that, I think taking feedback is a skill as well. I think also giving feedback is a skill. Yes. So I take for granted that I work in an industry where feedback is given and taken all day long, and it serves me early on in my career to develop a bit of a thick skin and separate my identity and my feelings from my work. But yeah, I take for granted that not everyone has that exposure to feedback or has had that practice. So I think there's a skill in that. If you're not necessarily so good at it right now, you can develop that skill, and it's only, again, going to serve you.
Well, this is the plug. Serving us, Rick and I, is that's part of the process when we're teaching our courses, to be able to say, show us what you're working on. We're going to give you constructive, fair feedback. And we never really had that growing up. Like a lot of times when you like share something, people don't want to give you feedback, and then they're just going to tell you it's dope.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a musician, after every live show, like I'm sure you guys get that a lot, where it's hard to hear everyone who's like, great job, great job, great job. Because even if you just didn't, like, you knew it wasn't a great job.
Yeah.
People are still going to say it, and, that's part of their job as a friend, just that you don't go home and cry yourself to sleep. But it is welcome. It's like, you might hurt my feelings for a split second, but I'm going to get over that. And your honest feedback is so much more useful to me than you just telling me great job every time.
Exactly.
Those types of people are so rare.
Yeah, so find them and hold on to them very tightly.
100%. Because like most of the crowd is just good job. You killed it, blah, blah, blah. Or they just don't even know any better. Exactly. And maybe they actually think. And then there's people who just wouldn't say anything. And they might like, you'll be looking at them like, I wonder if they're going to say how that set was, and they're quiet. And you're like, oh, I know that set was bad. And then there's the tiny amount of people that will actually say something to you in a way that's going to help you for the next time. And I try to be that person, because I know what it's like to want to find somebody. But yeah, sometimes you got to ask too. Like I remember when I lost in 2013, I was like, the first thing I'm going to do is ask the judges straight up, how come I didn't make even the podium? And that's what I did. I was like, Headspin, I just asked him, like, how come you guys didn't choose me? He just gave me a bunch of points. And I was like, okay. And I wrote them all down on a piece of paper. And when I came out with my set for 2014, I was like, did I get that? Yep. Did I do that? Yep. Did I do that? And then I ended up winning in 2014. Like that was that was only a piece of the puzzle, but it was a big piece of the puzzle. So yeah,
that's a good point. Just like straight up asking, being candid about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Mark's been doing that lately. He's he set a goal this year to send out his beats to like DJs and producers that he respects. Just ask. And he's already gotten some really good feedback from somebody who is very vocal and kind of has the same attitude as Mark and I, like no secrets and always be an open book. And
I was so excited for feedback. I was like,
Mark, I love getting your beats, and I just feel like such a I'm part of this little club, and I get to go up to my studio and put my headphones on, and then write a little list of notes for you.
Yeah. But I mean, if it's no good, like if it's just I don't know, just to be frank, like if it's just not good or a low quality scenario where I produce something, it's just, you got to go back to the drawing board. Please tell me.
Especially when we've been inside of a project for too long. Sometimes you just need that outside perspective, right?
100%.
But also I've learned too, don't ask for feedback if you don't want to hear it yet. Because I do this with my partner sometimes, and I just want someone to be like, good job. Because, I put in 3 hours and I've realized that's what I want. And that's not her style. She's very much the kind of person that we want, the straight goods all the time. And so I've learned, like, when I want her opinion, her honest opinion, I'll ask for it. But be careful, because if I just want to be patted on the back, I should know that difference. And
there you go, man.
yeah, so because there's a time for that too, when you just need someone to, you know, pat you on the back and be like, it's gonna be okay.
I think that's when you're just feeling down, you know, and you're too much on the other end. You're like, you believe that you're not good, and you believe your stuff isn't as good as it actually is. That's a whole other story.
Sometimes that is another story.
Sometimes you need that person to be like, yo, you need to believe in yourself, because your stuff is good. That's another type of feedback, you know, picking somebody up from the negative zone.
That's true.
You guys are here so funny. So my fiance worked on she worked on a huge mural. Well, it's on a canvas, right? It's a huge piece, man. It covers.
She's a painter.
She's a painter. So I wanted a picture in front of it, and she's like, "What do you think?" Something like that, and I'm like, "Well, yeah, this part's." I was like, "This part's funny because it looks like a penis." And so she looks at it and she's like, "Oh, it does look like a fucking penis." And she's like, "Now I gotta change the whole thing."
Yeah, because she can't unsee it.
You know, and you know, she did, because she's like, "I don't want this thing going up and people going, look at that. That looks like a penis." You know,
that was probably a good call to say that, man.
Well, you know what? She asked me. We have a rule. Like, if she asked me for feedback, like, I'm like, "Well, what do you want? Like, are you talking about color? Are you talking about what? Like, what do you want?" And I'll just give her like two things, like cluttered, busy, because I know she doesn't want that. Like, is it busy? Is it cluttered? Is it messy? Things like that. And she appreciates that, because that's like having your back. When you give someone feedback, you want to, hey, I'm giving this to you because I want to have your back, you know?
Well, yeah, it's from a place of love, even if it's, you know, something personal where someone's like, hey, you do this thing. I don't like it, or I don't think you should do it anymore. Sometimes it feels like an attack, but most of the time it's going to be from a place of love. They're looking out for you or whatever.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, for sure. It's an ego thing, right? Like when you're showing somebody your art, if you've never done it before and you're asking for feedback, it almost feels like just like taking your clothes off and walking outside. Yeah. Just like, what do you guys think of this nakedness? And like, you know, but then the more you do that, you're going to start strutting around and just being more comfortable naked, you know, like no matter 100%. What people. So
yeah, playing in a band is like that too. You develop this, like, in that room, in that studio, the rehearsal space, it becomes such a sacred kind of vulnerable space. And the major killer of that atmosphere is ego every time. So when we were Run Dear Run, my kind of like my main project, when we were recording our first and only album so far, we made a little rule that, like, we made a metaphor that your ego was like a set of keys that you put in a bowl at the front of a door at a house party. You know, if you're going to drink, you put your keys in the bowl and then you go into the house party and have fun. Same thing. You put your ego in the bowl at the door and you fucking leave it there, because there's no place for ego in a studio. Like, and especially in a band and collaboration setup, because, you know, this is my opinion, but like you should be playing for the song or for the album. That's where you should be thinking from, I think, not from like, how can where's my place in this? You know, how can I show off my sick paradiddle skills on the drum set? Like, that's not what it's really about. It's like, what can I do to serve the song?
Yeah,
I agree with that. You can apply that to so much, Adam.
Absolutely. And ego in general being kind of the killer. But to your point, it is, you can be overly critical of yourself too. I have been in bands since I was 13. I've taken breaks from music, but I've been playing music my entire life almost. I only started calling myself a musician 2 years ago because I just didn't feel confident. I always felt like, you know, it's the, what do you call that? Imposter syndrome. You know, every set, like we'd even be at a good venue, like some of my favorite venues or a festival, And I would just be like, oh, I don't belong here. I'm an imposter. Like, I'm the worst drummer on this bill. And then I'd be like, every drummer is looking at me, just judging me and being like, this drummer is the worst. And then I realized, like, I'm not the worst, I'm different. And this isn't like an excuse for my bad playing. It's like, my style is my style, you know? How I developed it is unique from how other drummers develop their style. And so I used to come at it as like, I can't play as well as this person, or I wish I could do this role or this fill. And now it's like, I don't give a shit. I love what they do. I love what I do. It's totally separate. I do not need to compare myself to them. I'd rather have a conversation after the show about how sick their cymbals are than avoid them because I'm afraid that they were judging me or that I didn't perform to their standards. Because it's always mostly in your head anyways.
Usually. That's how I think all artists can relate to that story for sure, man.
Yeah.
And the good thing is when you start understanding your uniqueness and your individuality in whatever art you do, it starts to become your superpower, because even if somebody is better in some skills or techniques in the same types of things you're doing, they're not going to do it with your swag if you're a swaggy type of person in that art, or they're not going to do it with your flair or your style or whatever. And those are the things that are always unique to you, and they come from whatever your DNA pushes your art out as. And once you can finally understand that, I mean, it's hard to do that because you first start out and you copy other people in your art, and then you get kind of okay, but now you're comparing yourself that my art isn't as good as that person. And then I think the next level is like, okay, but this is how I do it, and this is what I want to communicate with my art. This is how I want to express myself, and I do it in this way. And then you create this artistic identity, and then that just becomes like a shield and weapons and your armament all at the same time with your art, you know, like, you know, obviously take the feedback and all that kind of stuff, but you just get so much more confident because you know that nobody's going to do this the way that I do this, because I'm so honest and genuine with myself of how I communicate and express my art that I can't really compare myself to anybody anymore. You know, I can compare the skill things, like if I wanted to tighten up my rhythm and if I wanted to whatever, make my drums sound better in my production. But as far as like the artistic stuff of it, that is always unique to you. And that's like such a superpower.
Yeah, well said. Well, we're past an hour now. I have like this whole list of questions. Like, we didn't even chat about these. So we're gonna have to book another session in a few weeks or so.
Let's do it, Adam. That was a good talk, though.
Especially Mark, we haven't been able to do our breakfasts, so maybe this can take that.
Well, I remember we were having our breakfast saying we got to pull Rick in here pretty soon.
Totally.
Because of all the stuff we've been talking about. It's like, oh man, Rick would love to get in.
Well, yeah, and like I designed both of your logos. We didn't even talk about that. Like me and Rick come from the same program in school. Me and Mark worked together. Our lives are very interwoven, you know. It's
true.
Yeah, so we could, I'm sure, chat all day, but we'll have to continue.
And I have a friend from Toronto whose name is Adam Warner as well, who gave me my first tattoo.
No way. I know there's an Adam Warner there that's a country singer as well.
Oh, crazy.
Is that person are they a country singer?
Not
just a tattooer. Okay.
Just a tattoo.
It sounds like us Adam Warners are up to some pretty interesting stuff, though. So
I think so, man.
Kudos to all you Adam Warners out there.
I love you, Adam Warners. You guys are great.
Keeping that legacy going. Well, thanks, friends. Do you guys want to leave any URLs right now? What is it? mydjmentors.com.
Yeah, that's it, basically. www.mydjmentors.com. I think sometimes if you forget the www. It might not lead you to the right place, might lead you to a broken page. You got to fix that. Just make sure you put in the www and then .mydjmentors.com, and that will lead you to a page to just book a call with us so we can chat, because we want to hear about our potential students or just anyone who's an aspiring DJ and what their goals are and everything. If we can help you out, then we can start talking about further things like the DJ mentorship program.
Sweet. And then for that Facebook group, can anyone join that?
Yep, it's just the Beat Drop DJ community group. just be careful because there's also a beat drop community group without the DJ in it. And then there's just like 3 questions in there to answer, just so we know that you're about DJing and you want to be in there and actually contribute things about DJing and participate. That's all you got to do, and then we let you in. It's a public group too, so
I'm gonna join that one.
Please.
Yeah, man, get on it.
Yeah, and I'll drop those links into. I'm gonna post this on Facebook and YouTube, so I'll drop those links in there.
Awesome, cool.
Well, thank you, friends. It was so great catching up with you, and looking forward to seeing 2021 what that holds for Beat Drop and for Fatrok and C-Sik.
Thanks, Adam.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Adam. It's good seeing you, man, virtually, but good seeing you anyway.
Yeah, buddies. We'll see you soon.
All right, man. See you guys.